Hello everyone, I hope you're all well. Today I want to talk to you about some of my special second-hand book purchases that I've been picking up recently in charity shops in York. And I have actually been sitting down for a while thinking what to talk to you about, and then I realised it's really obvious. In my office, I recently put up a shelf of little books, of books that just don't fit on any of my other shelves. As you can see, we do have a new bookshelf, or an extension of this bookshelf behind me, and in fact there are still empty parts of this bookshelf. But I do have lots of little books, quite a lot of them that are second-hand that I've collected over time, or just like special editions of books that are slightly smaller that I wanted to display. So I now have a little shelf which inadvertently has become like a bit of a Virginia Woolf shrine, just because I have my portrait of her above it, but actually the majority of the books are a mix. It's not all Virginia Woolf, even though that would be ideal. But quite a lot of the books on that shelf I've been picking up recently going around the charity shops of York. If you, like me, like nothing better than going charity shopping, either looking for like ceramic animals or teacups or secondhand books, I can't recommend York enough as a city. Mainly because there is just one stretch of road that has like 5 charity shops on them. And I've always found, even as a student, some brilliant books in these charity shops. But recently I have found some books I just know are going to be like the ones that I keep until I die, which is how you know I love a book, when I feel like this is going to go in the casket with me. As the flames come up, these books will be with me. When I go looking for books in charity shops, I don't necessarily go to look for books that I want to read that I haven't read yet. I tend to go looking for weird, unique, just old editions of books, and they're not necessarily valuable editions of the books either. They just are ones with older covers that I find intriguing or cool, or old movie tie-in editions, which you'll notice quite a few of them in this video. My love of old movie tie-in editions are also why I'm not necessarily mad at new movie tie-ins, just because I know one day there'll probably be someone scouring charity shops to find them. But a lot of these books that I love have become classic films, or my favourite films, and so I tend to like to buy them if I also love the film of the book as well. But it is a great way just to talk about some of my favourite books, the books that I have bought edition after edition after edition of. Even within this little collection of books, there are books that I have my folio copies of, or I have different hardback copies of, because I love them so much. Before I do my little secondhand book haul, I would love to know if you, like me, are also a collector of your favourite books in a myriad of different editions, or in fact if you just see no point in that, because there is an element that a lot of these books I buy to keep and to look at, and these aren't necessarily the editions for the books that I will read, and I know that people have a lot of opinions on that as well, but I would love to know if there's a book that you have multiple editions of. The first book I'm going to start with is a bit of an outlier, because actually this isn't one of my favourite books, but it is one of my favourite films of all time, and this is The Sound of Music, the touching romantic story of the Trapp family singers by Maurier von Trapp. The Sound of Music is such a foundational part of who I am as a human being, and it is just one of the things that brings me the greatest joy in my life. I literally got married walking down the aisle with Ben to Edelweiss, and then our song when we left was also Climb Every Mountain, even though no one else could hear it. This is the film that I have watched so many times. In fact, there is also actually another book in this list that kind of is another book that I'm not necessarily a big, massive fan of, but I love the adaptation. I actually haven't read the real life story of Maurier von Trapp. I have seen documentaries. Do I think I'm going to read this? Maybe. I just kind of saw Julie Andrews, who's one of my icons in life. I literally had my hair cut short, very similar to hers, and dyed my hair a very similar colour to hers as well, just to feel like I can be a bit like Maurier. But I just saw this in the charity shop, and in fact it hadn't even been like clocked in, like they hadn't even put down a price, and I just saw it on the till and I was like, I have to have that, and she hadn't even priced it, and I was like, you can put any price in the till, I will be taking Julie Andrews home with me. So that's my first one. This is the thing with my personality, I am nothing if not passionate and obsessive, and will buy things that little Claire would have been desperate to have, you know, bought. But if there is anything with Sound of Music, in fact I would love a poster of this. I would love to get like a vintage Sound of Music poster, or like an old kind of album vinyl like cover or something. But yeah. The next book I also think requires a little bit of context, and it is The Thorn Birds by Colleen McCullough. This is, I think, me and my mum have had an obsession together with the Thorn birds since she probably first watched it when she was about 17, I think, or a young teenager, and since I was basically a child, and she introduced me to the TV series with Richard Chamberlain. And since then we watch it regularly together. We know all of the words of the TV series. It has been a lifelong love that we have shared. The book I've also read many times. The book I enjoyed. It's problematic, and now reading it as an adult, I'm a little bit like, some of it doesn't sit quite right with me, but it is a great family saga set in Australia, and that for me just ticks kind of multiple boxes really. It is a saga that spans the decades. I've been on the lookout for kind of a vintage copy of the Thorn birds because my edition is well read, well loved, but I don't really like the cover that much, and I always thought this cover was so striking, with the thorn on the back as well. This edition was published in 1983, which is the same year the TV series came out, so I can imagine someone reading this and being also equally obsessed with the TV series. I also really like the blue inside as well. My dream would be if there was like a movie TV tie-in of this book. I don't think there is, but I would one day love, like, again, a movie poster with the TVs, which I can definitely just buy. My rule with these books, by the way, for all of these, is I don't ever eBay them or buy them online even when they're available to buy online. I kind of like it. I have certain books that I'm always on the lookout in charity shops for, and I just hope one day that I'll come across them, and if I don't come across it, it's just not meant to be, kind of thing. So I'm glad that I was able to get this for £2. All of these books were like under £5. I think only one of them was like £5. Most of them are £1 or £2, so I feel like for me this is a very good purchase. Next we have another 1980s edition of a book, but this time a 1920s classic. We have The Great Gatsby by F. Scott Fitzgerald. I've always wanted an edition of The Great Gatsby with the famous Celestial Eyes cover. That is the original cover of The Great Gatsby. But again, I only ever find things in charity shops, and so it's taken me a long time to actually get one, even though they have been reproduced really recently as well. But I just think it's one of the most stunning and striking cover designs of all time. And this is actually a 80s edition instead from America. It's an American edition, and I always like to think about how these books have ended up in York, or like what journeys they've taken on before coming to me, which is also the reason I like buying books in charity shop and secondhand, because they always have stories to tell. I have quite a few editions of The Great Gatsby that I've kind of collected over time because it is one of my favourite novels, but I wanted to quickly just show you this one. It is a movie time edition of the movie with Robert Redford and Mia Farrow, and I just think it's really beautiful. This edition I kind of inherited in a way from my aunt's. It was my aunt's family friend. Her mother had either died or had gone into a care home, and so I was given a massive bundle of books, and this one was one of them. And it, along with quite a few of the books that I actually still treasure to this day, belonged to a woman called Sheila. And I've got a really old video on my channel talking about secondhand books and why I love them so much, and also why I love kind of when people write their names in their books, and all of that kind of thing, because I basically had a box of Sheila's books that told such a beautiful story of her life, from when she was a young girl to when she went off to get a job and when she got married, and all these big monumental kind of times in her life were documented by her books. And I realised that one day all of my books are going to be in a box off to a charity shop, and in fact that leads really nicely onto the next book that I bought. In the Oxfam bookshop on Low Petergate in York, I picked up this really special edition of Rebecca. I just want to have a moment for the Oxfam bookshops in York actually, because the one on Low Petergate and on Micklegate, I think it's on, there are two in York, and in fact there's quite a few charity shops, and there's a general Oxfam in York as well. But the Oxfam bookshops, I think I found the best books. The majority of these books are from here. The one on Low Petergate is the one I go to most regularly because it's kind of more local to me. But every time I go in, there's so many treasures, and so many brilliant classics to find in there. The Oxfam bookshops just never fail to surprise me. A perfect example of this is where I got my 1995 movie tie-in or TV edition tie-in of Pride and Prejudice with Colin Firth and Jennifer Ely on it, which to this day is still one of my best secondhand book finds. But this is also where I got my edition of Rebecca. I feel like I don't talk about my love of Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier enough on my channel, or just about it in life in general. Every time I talk about it or I see anything about Rebecca, I just am filled with my memories of reading this book for the first time. I've kind of dipped into it now and again as I've gotten older, but I've never really sat down and done a full reread of it, so it's definitely due, especially because I feel like Rebecca for me is a book to be read in a claustrophobic summer. If you love Gothic literature, if you love Jane Eyre, I feel like this is a perfect book to read, but it just has so many of my favourite components to make it a masterpiece in my mind. Rebecca is also one of those books I've actually collected a few editions of, but I've always actually been on the lookout for this edition. What I find really funny about it is that it literally has cheap edition, the famous bestseller. And as someone who works in publishing, it makes me laugh because what they've basically done is put what I would put in the SEO of the subtitle on Amazon. They just put it on the page. And of course we do have, like, you know, Sunday Times bestseller, international bestseller on the cover of the books. I don't know if we would do cheap edition as a way to market the books, but I do find it really funny because everyone hates in publishing, including myself, the roundels, the non-removable stickers where it's like now a major motion picture. I feel like there's a lot of discourse about how much people hate it. So I kind of like to just remind myself that actually this has been going on in publishing for a long, long time. For me though, what makes this book really special is what's inside and not just the novel itself. But inside there is an inscription, and it reads, "To Barbara, on the occasion of her 15th birthday, with our very best love and wishes, Mother and Dad." I was also 15 when I first read Rebecca, which kind of makes it extra special. But I just think what I love, I mean, I know that this book may have been passed down and is potentially been in lots of different charity shops and passed around and bought by different people. I like to think that Barbara had this until it made its way to the charity shop. I like to think that it stayed with her all her life. That's what I'm gonna picture for myself, is that it was so important to her. And there were books that my dad actually has always, whenever he's bought me a book, has always written in it. And actually it's something that I've started to do with my friends now. So as an example, one of my friends, Ellie's just got married, so I bought her edition of Pride and Prejudice and I wrote inside it. My handwriting, my dad's handwriting is exactly like this. My handwriting is not like that and does not look as pretty, but I like the idea of either them keeping it forever, which they may do or they may not do, or someone then inheriting it and then having a little bit of their history in it as well. And this just really moved me because I think of how much books mean to people, and I just love the fact that I just hope that she kept it, and that this is Barbara's mum's handwriting. It just really moves me. I don't know what it is about it. Also, 15 I think is just such a tricky age. I don't know if that's just me. Nothing happened when I was 15. But just think, 15-year-old Barbara sitting down and reading, "Last night I dreamt I went to Manderley again." I just hope she had a great life with Rebecca. Hopefully with her till the end. The next book that I picked up is this 1970s edition of The French Lieutenant's Woman by John Fowles, which was published in the end of the 1960s, and it is one of the best historical fiction novels ever written. It's a historical novel set in the Victorian era, and at the same time it explores the Victorian era through the lens of a 1960s writer, but it also uses that era as a vehicle to almost explore the new kind of freedoms of the 1960s, and looking back at the Victorian era as an age of, you know, restraint, but also freedom and scientific discovery, and characters who are trapped within their roles and how they kind of go beyond the boundaries of what their gender is, their classes. It's just so good, and if you haven't read it, I can't recommend it enough. Why did I pick up this specific edition though? I just liked the cover. What also happened is when I went to the other Oxfam bookshop, I discovered that they have the same edition of this book, but it is in better condition than this one. So I don't know whether to go and buy that one and then donate this one back, because they're only like £1, so I can just go and do that. And it's just a little bit it's just in a little bit better condition. So I think I might go and do that and just do a bit of a swap. I maybe should have done that before filming this video, but never mind. The French Lieutenant's Woman is also a book where I have another edition of. I have like my reading edition and then I have another vintage edition. And I am now thinking that maybe if this would be something you'd be interested in, this is a whole other video because I have so many of these. But I'll just show you the ones that are relevant to this video for now. I have this edition from the 1980s movie with Meryl Streep in. I like this film. It's not one of my favourites of all time kind of thing, but I love Meryl Streep. And so, of course, if I see a book with Meryl Streep's face on it, I will buy it. I actually bought this edition when I was back in London. I think I have the video of my trip. From Malden Hall Park, which has a National Trust bookshop. National Trust bookshop's always some of my favourites, but it is such a brilliant bookshop and I miss it so much. I really want to go back. I haven't yet found a National Trust bookshop in Yorkshire yet that is quite as good as Malden Hall, but obviously I'm very spoilt with the amount of charity bookshops we have. But I definitely need to make an excuse to go back down to Malden, which I have no reason now to go down to Malden at all. But I love that bookshop so much, and it is actually the one thing that I think Ben and I both really miss, is just going out on a random afternoon, getting on the tram and going down to Malden Hall Park. But yeah, that's where I got this one from. We're now on to probably one of my favourite purchases of all time, along with the Pride and Prejudice movie tie-in. This is a book that I love the movie of. And when I was at the Austen bookshop on Petergate, or Lower Petergate, one of the Petergates, I still don't really know all the street names in York because I just know what they look like. So I think it is Petergate. When I was in there, I was looking around, seeing other movie edition tie-ins, and I was just thinking of all the different books that again, because I don't look at books on eBay, I don't buy things online, I always like to just find them. I always kind of have a list in my mind of books to remember to look out for. And one of them is Howard's End by Ian Forster, which is one of my favourite novels. And I saw other movie tie-ins and I thought, the book I really want is the movie tie-in, is Howard's End. It's one of my favourite books, one of my favourite movies, I've already said that. And then for just random, we decided to go to the Austen bookshop on Micklegate, which we don't tend to go in because it's a little bit further of a distance from us from where we live. Even though it's York itself, it's like a 15-minute city, so it's so easy to get there, but I'm just a little bit lazy. And we just went in and I went straight to the classic section, and again I was just kind of thinking, gosh, I really would love to find that Howard's End book. And then I just looked up and there it was. And my life has been officially made. The book itself is also just in like perfect reading condition, which isn't always the way, and so I will be able to really reread this book in this edition. Howard's End is a book that I don't think when people think of Ian Forster, I feel like A Rumour Review tends to be a big favourite. I don't tend to hear as many people talking about Howard's End, and so I haven't actually seen many beautiful editions of this book. I have a Penguin English Library edition, so it's so special to have this movie edition. And I also have to say that I think this as a movie cover is probably like one of my, I think as a movie poster, one of my favourites, and again I would have it as a poster on my wall. Howard's End and my love of Ian Forster again is something that I feel like I need to talk a little bit more about on my channel because it is kind of foundational to who I am. But I do actually have a really old review. I don't know if I'd call it a review now. Again, it's like, I think I'm even in my childhood bedroom in this one, I can't remember, but talking about Howard's End, doing a review of it when I first read it. The novel Howard's End can kind of be summarised in 2 words, only connect. About connecting your kind of your head with your heart, feelings and thought, and also the connections we make with one another and the impact they have. You have a novel which is very much about class, about differences between capitalism and art and kind of materialism. You have kind of clashing conflicts of those and how little we care for people and how we maybe care too much about other things. It is a novel that ticks so many of my boxes in terms of theme, as well as having great characterisation. I think Ian Forster is a writer who is incredibly funny, and so his characterisation is so witty, and very similar in my mind to Jane Austen in the way that as soon as their character comes on the page, you know what they're going to sound like, you know what they're going to say because of how cleverly kind of created the characters are. This time edition was published in 1992, and a little Hello magazine, someone's obviously cut out, from December 18th, 1993. So again, this piece of paper is older than I am. In fact, Ben was born in 1993. He was a few months old when this came out. They obviously put it out to use as a bookmark. This is why I love secondhand books, because you find little weird things like that. I once found like a thing from a library in a book that was literally on my birthday, so someone had checked out a book and they'd left it in on the day that I was born, which I thought was really cool. But how weird is that? The film itself is a Merchant Ivory film, and I feel like you can't go wrong. You know, Emma Thompson, Helena Bonham Carter, Samuel West, Anthony Hopkins, like the cast is just amazing and makes for, yeah, one of my favourite films. I also have another Ian Forster Merchant Ivory tie-in. I have A Room with a View, which isn't in quite as good condition. I really love A Room with a View, both the book and the film, but Howard's End for me will forever be kind of, yeah, my all-time favourite. So now, because the Austen bookshop on Micklegate gave me Howard's End, it has to be one of my favourites, and I will now go more often. It is actually, Ben and I used to go there a lot more when we were first dating, and it is actually where Ben used to work. Ben used to volunteer there, and so he bought quite a few things for me when we were first dating from the Austen bookshop. And so it is a really lovely shop to kind of go in and explore. And in fact, York in general, I would definitely recommend if you want to come for a city break and you love a bit of charity shopping. I feel like for me it's the only kind of guilt-free shopping I ever do, because I'm just giving to charity. I'm just very, very charitable. I feel like I've shown quite a few of the different multiple editions I have of the books, but if you are interested in seeing a video about the books I do have multiple editions of, whether they are new books or secondhand, please let me know. And again, like I said, please let me know what your favourite book is, and if you go and collect different editions of it. If you have like 10 editions of a book, I'd love to know. So you can either leave me a comment saying that, because I would love to get to know you a little bit more via that question, or if you would like to, please leave me a little book emoji, it feels like, for this video. But thank you for watching, and I will see you again soon in another video.